Hello, welcome to Jennifer's Magical Book Club. Today I'm here to read a novel which is called Paperboy. I'm going to continue from page 114 from part 2. A good smell came from the kitchen and my nose and stomach started reminding me how long it had been since I had tasted Ma'am's cooking. I had gone upstairs to take a bath without Ma'am's telling me and came back down wearing a clean pair of shorts and nice shirt for collecting. My parents were eating out with friends like they usually did on Friday nights. Ma'am had a big plate of fried chicken on the table along with black-eyed peas and smashed potatoes. They were just regular mashed potatoes, but I like to get that good S in there for starter since it meant about the same thing. Ma'am sat down to eat with me. She was mostly just stabbing at her food. It was best for me not to look at her. It hurt to see her banged up face. All I could think about was taking a nice shiny new baseball that still had all the red and blue writing on it and throwing it as hard as I could right between the eyes of the person who beat up with Ma'am. I wished that I was going to be throwing papers instead of collecting because I felt like having something for sure. I had one more week to go before Rat got home, and I was planning on some super hard newspaper throws. I asked Ma'am to help her with the dishes, but she said to go on and start my collecting so I could get home early. She notched up her voice to make sure I heard her. You needs to pay this full mind. You be home for dark or you will have me come looking for you. I could tell she wasn't fooling. I went upstairs to get some change from my desk drawer. I looked in my billfold at the 3 words written on 3 different corners of a dollar bill. Student, servant, seller. I knew I would get a 4th word next week. I didn't have any clue what word it would be, but I had a notion it would start with an S. I wondered if Mr. Sparrow knew that S was my favorite sound and letter in all the world. If I had been Napoleon, I would have changed that stone with the writing on it so more words would have started with S, especially my name. I must have been heard about Ma'am's busted a face because I forgot to be nervous about my collecting when I started out. When I rang the doorbell at TV Boy's house, I found myself having bad thoughts about him. Sitting there in front of his dumb television day after day without any problems. I thought that a dirt clod upside his head or a rock to smash the screen would make him forget about television for a while. I knew it was dumb to have feelings like that, and I knew it because I was upset about what had happened to Ma'am. But that was how I felt, and I couldn't trick myself out of it. At one house, I said 95 cents without stuttering. When I was heard about something else, it seemed like I forgot to stutter. But I always remembered it again soon enough. I walked by Mr. Sparrow's house where a few hours earlier I had seen all his books and recited my poem for him. In my mind, it was it was easy to see him sitting in his big chair, reading a book from one of the crates. A book that he had brought in Timbuktu or someplace. He had said the world was in his books, and I knew he was right about that for himself, but could I find out in books how to help Ma'am or Mrs. Worthington? Could I find in books about the man who made me with my mother, or how to get my knife back from T? Coming up on Mrs. Worthington's house, I was glad to see that the porch light was on, and that there wasn't a car in the driveway. The last thing I needed was to be yelled at again by Mr. Worthington, or to see Greaser Churlas. I rang the doorbell, not expecting anyone to be at home, but Mrs. Worthington opened the glass door fast, like she had been standing there waiting on me. She had on her red lipstick. Her hair was up on top of her head like in a new way. It looked like she had spent a lot of time putting it in its new place. Her eyelashes curled up again, but she had on her usual green housecoat instead of a dress. As soon as she opened the door, I could smell she had been drinking her whiskey. How nice to see my sweetie Paperboy. She seemed to be talking okay. The whiskey hadn't made her start saying her words funny yet. 95 cents for this week, and 90 for 2 more weeks if you want. She pushed open the screen door so fast and almost hit me in the face. Sure, sweetie. Come in while I get my handbag. I let the door close without stepping inside. The whiskey had a sweet smell, and so did the perfume that Mrs. Worthington was wearing. The two sweet smells all mixed into together reminded me of parties at my parents' house. If the smell got too sweet, and especially if it got mixed in with the mothballs and the attic, I would sneak outside and over to Ma'am's room to get away from it. Come on in, sweetie, like I told you. She held the screen door open for me. I didn't have to think twice about going in to see where Mr. Sparrow lived, but I wasn't sure if I should go inside Mrs. Worthington's house. I was nervous, but I went in anyway. I expected to see stuff all over the floor and broken furniture and glass, but what I could see of the house looked coming neat. The front hall was smaller than ours, but the woodwork looked just as shiny. Sit there in the living room, sweetie. I'll be right back with your allowance. Allowance? Where did she come up with that? I walked into the living room, but as soon as I sat down on the couch, the loose change in my pockets and started spilling out between the seat cushions. Leaving the coins would make me short on my collection, so I pulled up the cushions to start gathering my money. Mrs. Worthington came back in the room with a glass in each hand. Well, look at Mr. Moneybags. I pulled my hand back like I had been doing something wrong. She put the glasses down on the table. Anything you find in there is all yours, sweetie. So this is till page 118. I'm going to continue back from page 119 next time. So I'm willing to have you guys a good time with me, and I hope you'll come back. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.